Lord, thank you so much for just these few minutes that we can spend together today. I just pray that you would just speak to each and every one of us. Lord, meet us where we are. We're all in different places in ministry. Certainly we're in different places with something like direct mail. But God, I just pray that you would just bless our time and make it special, and just identify some next steps that might be the right ones for us today. And we just commit this time to you, and we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Take it away, guys.
Well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you coming. It's great timing because year-end appeal season is upon us, and that is when your donors are starting to feel much more generous. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. If you get nothing out of our presentation today, I want you to know that you can do this. You can get a letter in the mail, either on your own or with someone like us who can help you do it. So I just want to make sure that you know you can do mail. We're going to talk a lot of details today.
Absolutely.
First off, a little bit about Abeja. Brianna and I met at a national nonprofit here in Phoenix that had 2,000 nonprofit affiliates. And those small nonprofits were really struggling.
Tiny.
Struggling to do the basics of asking people to give, thanking them for their donation, and reporting impact back to them in a really meaningful way. And Brianna's job was actually helping to upskill those small nonprofits. So we really hit on a business idea on mail is really an effective way to reach your donors, to engage them in the mission that you have. But a lot of those small nonprofits needed a little bit of help to deal with the postal service, deal with printers. And so that's how Abeja was born 10 years ago. And we've been serving small to medium nonprofits ever since.
Absolutely. We are going to go through these slides super fast and skip over a few. I am putting that link in the, actually I put an underscore in there. That's the wrong one. See, you don't need to remember this. Abeja-mail. There we go. It happens when I don't copy paste. We have a ton of resources that you can reference after this conversation. So some of the things that we'll skip over or go over very lightly, we have resources for you to go through that. And then I'm sure the Venture 19 folks will email out the resources in that link too.
Yeah. Brad is a formal instructional designer, so there's a lot of step-by-step guides to getting this done. So
yeah. And the presentation is there too.
So
what are you going to learn today?
Yeah, some key takeaways. We're going to talk about the 4 parts of a basic appeal, so you know what it looks like. We're going to talk about the critical tasks to get it done, some do's and don'ts, mistakes we see people do all the time, and great things we see people do. And then some tips that are going to save you time and budget so that you have a higher return on your investment.
So you guys are here today to learn about direct mail, hopefully because you know that direct mail works. It is one of the most effective fundraising tactics available to you to fund your mission.
Yeah, I started my career in print journalism, and then I've got a degree in integrated marketing communications. So that is putting print with digitals for higher impact. And that's exactly what you want to do in your year-end campaigns. But if you only have to choose one, we say choose mail. Because the average letter, these fundraising letters, you're going to have a 6 to 9% response rate, and that just blows away anything digital. And email has a response rate of 0.07, and those ads on Facebook, it's like 48 cents for every dollar you spend. You're actually losing money on those meta ads. So we say if you're going to choose one tactic, go with print because it works. And why does it work? That's because the average donor in the United States is 65 years old. She's a 65-year-old woman. And importantly, she doesn't work for your nonprofit. So she needs a little bit of information, which is really hard to convey in a Facebook ad or an email. She needs a little bit more. And a letter is a perfect way to do that. I should also point out that a letter actually gives you room to make that case to that kind of donor. and it makes it easy for her to give.
And especially for year end, you want to put those in the mail now. If you can only have time for one letter a year, make it in October, November, December, whatever fits with your schedule. But people are giving more generously towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I should point out, when we talk about response rates, that's actually money in your bank account. That's not things like click-throughs and open rates. It's actually money in your bank. So mail works.
Yeah. So there are dozens of ways to get a letter out the door, but we're going to talk about 4 parts of an appeal, the simplest package that you can do on your own, and any printer in the United States can also do for you. You might get some packages from Save the Children or veterans organizations that look a lot fancier than this. You don't have to go there. Start with the basics and then build over time. So the 4 parts of the appeal are, first, the outer envelope. That's what gets the open. You want people to take that appeal from their mailbox and not immediately put it into the trash can. You want them to open it and savor it with their cup of coffee. So you want to make sure that your logo is prominent, that they know who it's coming from, and there's some sort of tease. It can include a photo, it can be just plain text, but something that tells people, yeah, I do want to open this envelope. The second part is the letter itself. That's what connects the donor to your organization emotionally, the mission, why they care. You want to open up. People don't give from a logical point of view, they give from their emotions and their hearts. The reply slip is probably the hardest to do, but makes the most difference in your response rate. You want to make it super easy to give. Remove as many what we call blockers as possible. You know, don't make the donor get out scissors. Don't make them fill in a lot of pieces of information that you already have about them, right? You mailed it to them, put their mailing address on the reply slip so they don't have to fill it in again. We'll come back to that too. Another thing that makes it very easy for the donor is to include a reply envelope. A number 9 envelope with your address on it that's already pre-filled makes it so easy for them to just slide in their check or the reply slip with their MasterCard number and place a stamp and send it in the mail. Now, before we move on into the process of getting into mail, does anyone have any questions? I think we're good. Great. So mail is a little bit more difficult. Okay. I love this question. Kelly asked, we're talking about a letter mailer. What about a postcard with a QR code? So let's go back to this reply slip. The response rate for a postcard is closer to 1% versus a 6 to 9% response rate with a letter. And the reason is that reply slip. Most of the donors are not using QR codes today. They are super popular, but the stats just don't bear that the average donor are using them. We definitely encourage you to use them if your donors are scanning those QR codes, but you want to make it easy.
Don't make the choice for the donor.
Don't make the choice for the donor. Postcards are wonderful as reminders at the very last minute. Hey, you got our appeal. You still haven't sent us a donation. Remember about that. So we don't recommend postcards for your primary appeal. Great question.
Brianna, does that go back to the average age of the donor with the QR codes, or is it just not as an effective use of space as far as how people engage that, so to speak?
Laura can talk a little bit about the story aspects, right?
Okay.
It doesn't give you enough real estate.
Got it. Okay.
We're going to talk about data in a little bit, Paula, so we'll come to that. So first of all, the process of direct mail is a little bit more involved than, say, sending an email, but your return on investment is going to be much higher in terms of dollars in the door. But first thing, planning is essential so that you can go through all of these steps without a lot of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sourcing a story is critical. Laura will talk a lot about stories in a little bit, but we need something that tugs at the heartstrings to open up the wallet. Once you've sourced a story, get to writing the copy, and fundraising writing is a little counterintuitive. It's not what your English instructor wants you to put on the paper. A lot more ellipses, a lot more short sentences that don't really have a subject, a lot of exclamation points. Data is deciding who you're going to send your mailing list to. I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. And then making sure that that data is clean so you don't send anything embarrassing out the door. Designing, making sure that that piece really fits what you're able to print using your own equipment or your printer, your local Alpha Graphics, your local union shop, what they can print on their pieces without much effort. Pre-press is all at the printer, or if you're doing things internally, those triple checks so you don't have 1,000 pieces that have a little tiny error on them. And then, of course, production and mailing is a lot more physical involvement, but still, if you plan ahead, it goes a lot easier. So to start,
you should actually document your plan. So in the toolkit that we've given you that you can look at later, there is a tool called a creative brief. Marketing teams use this to document a project before they do it. Your project is smaller than a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign, but the steps are still the same. You need to know what your purpose is for your appeal right off the bat. You need to align the people and the resources you have. And going step by step through this creative brief is going to really help you line all of those resources up so they're working like chess pieces in the hand of a grandmaster. And then also really having a firm idea of what your timeline is. We're going to recommend to you a no stress timeline because you have many things happening near the year end. And we want to make sure that your hair doesn't get as gray as mine is getting these days. So document your plan up front, get the people you need to in the same room. Let's look at a little bit more of that creative brief. So the creative brief has these kind of categories. Team, what's their availability? You want to make sure that someone's not going on vacation when they need to approve copy. Or if you're a one-person shop, that you're not missing deadlines that you need to meet as well. I like to push things off. Anyone else? Procrastinators? Let's unite. Again, you know why you're asking for money. You've made conscious decisions about your postage. We're going to talk about postage because rates just went up. You're thinking about your mailing list, who's going to pull it, what you're going to actually pull to make a really convincing case through the data, who your audience is, and what are the kinds of emotional stories that are relatable and likable to them. Your value proposition, why should people actually be giving to you and not someone else in the nonprofit space at this time of year? There is some competition, particularly in an election year, right? You're thinking about your design, how you're going to get that done. It's not just going to be outsourced to your nephew who's going to use Canva. You're actually thinking thoughtfully about how you're going to make enough room to get that done. And then what's that ideal mail date? And how are you going to get it done? Are you going to do it yourself? You're going to outsource it to a printer? Do you need a little help from an affordable firm like ours that does direct mail all the time? You're thinking up front about those kinds of things and being a good steward of your resources.
Yeah.
Of course, you want to align your team. If you have more than one person in your team, you want to think about who is actually responsible for doing the work, who is accountable. Is there someone who needs to be consulted, but they're not going to swoop in at the last minute and make lots of edits that are going to make things delayed in your project, and then who can just be informed that this is happening, but they don't actually need to provide input. So thinking about this model, we call it the RACI model. A lot of corporations use this to think about how do you align all those team members so everyone kind of stays in their own lane and provides value within their job description.
Mhm.
Okay.
And of course, we're fundraising so we can make money. So you really want to have some financial goals and a budget. So you have some expectations. Forecasting gross revenue, there are some tools in the toolkit on how to do that. Looking at old donor data, average gift amounts, how many people responded, and you can forecast your gross revenue fairly easily. If you're new to direct mail, you can sort of look at industry standards. M&R Benchmarks is a great place to get information. And I'm sure there are some, religious organization data out there that you can find. You'll want to estimate your cash costs, and this will influence how you're going to create your appeal. Are you going to print it on your printers in your office? Then your cash costs are ink, actual paper. Ink is one of the most expensive substances on the planet. It is more expensive than gold in weight.
So is it $2,700? $2,700
per gallon.
Wow.
So don't assume that printing on your own printer is less expensive than going to FedEx, Kinko's, or a more professional shop. Do the math. Then you can forecast your net revenue and make some choices. Oh, actually, it doesn't make sense to do it internally. Let's outsource. Of course, analyze, adjust, but definitely pay attention to the actual costs and what you're expecting to get in return. Now, one of the biggest factors in your budget is going to be postage. Now, is there anyone in this call, you can just mention in the chat, that has fewer than 200 donors? You can just give me a thumbs up. Forever stamps just went up to 73 cents. And they are super expensive. Okay, we're going to address that. Now, there is an option for people that have more than 200 pieces. You can start using something called marketing mail or nonprofit marketing mail, which is a subset of marketing mail. Now, who wants to pay 50 cents less than that 73-cent stamp? Everyone does. But in order to get those rates, you have to go through a few hoops. So this is another reason why outsourcing might actually be beneficial for you. Now, if you have fewer than 200 donors, you pretty much have to use a forever stamp on your piece. USPS only gives discounts if you have 200 identical pieces or more, or 50 pounds of mail. And that is a lot more than 200 pieces. So your option really is to use a forever stamp. Great news, those forever stamps get delivered super fast, usually 2 to 3 business days, versus nonprofit postage that is more like 5 to 7 business days, depends on the area. And you want to consider doing a DIY production. Stuffing, printing, mailing, all on your own using those forever stamps. If you're above 200 pieces, you want to look at potentially using a nonprofit rate. And I'm not going to go into all of the things that go into that. Just know that it requires a lot of paperwork, but saves you a lot of money. There are tools in the toolkit to apply for that permit and to use that postage discount. When you start being over about 400 donors, it makes sense financially to look at outsourcing your printing and mailing to a mail house. That way you can get automation discounts, and that 23 cents of the nonprofit, that's actually the highest rate available. If you start using an outsourcer, you can get destination discounts, a whole bunch of other things. So your cost could actually go down to like 14 cents a piece. So you really do want to do the math before you make a choice and say, oh yeah, doing it all ourselves is actually going to make a lot of sense. Because simply the 50 cents postage discount can save you a ton of money if you start to outsource. So sorry, can't go into a ton of detail on that, but there's a nonprofit authorization toolkit in the link. What else do you want?
This is a great time of year to secure a matching gift. Having a matching gift that for every dollar you give, your donation will be matched $1. That can increase the chance someone gives by 22%. That's according to the Journal of Public Economics and some really in-depth surveys. So don't, if you can, spend the next month trying to find that matching gift. It doesn't have to come from that one donor who always gives you the big gift. It can actually come from a group of kind of mid-level donors. To find that matching gift, you may have a good relationship with the church or a local small business that's willing to give you some sort of matching gift. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be $1,000. You're going to match gifts up to $1,000. But we really encourage people, don't go into the year end without a matching gift.
And timeline. No one wants to be stuffing mail on their on their sofa at the very last minute, right? On December 15th. Plan for a reasonable, no stress timeline. We generally recommend at least 8 weeks from beginning to production, and then assuming that mailing will take 2 weeks, especially if you're using a nonprofit rate. First class stamps will get to their destinations earlier, but also consider how far you're mailing. Are you keeping everything local? Are you mailing to Hawaii or Alaska or Maine? Those take a lot longer. But you want to give plenty of time for yourself to source that story, adjust. This timeline gives you plenty of room to make adjustments when you determine, oh shoot, we actually are missing a lot of data, or we need to resource the story because it's not as impactful as we thought. So we always recommend working backwards from your ideal mail date. Right now, the dates available, most organizations are thinking about right after something arriving right after Veterans, or right before Veterans Day, excuse me, arriving by Veterans Day or Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or Christmas, right? You want to figure out what your mail date, your ideal mail date is, and then work backwards 8 weeks from them there. I want to really emphasize to avoid the 1 to 2 weeks before Election Day, especially if you're in a battleground state. Inboxes will be overwhelmed with election mail, and your printers too, if you choose to outsource, will be overwhelmed with election mail. So your piece will be delayed. Just avoid it completely.
So let's talk let's talk a little bit about story and why you're doing a letter versus a postcard. First thing I want to tell you about writing. Some people get really nervous about it. I want to encourage you to be courageous in your writing. You are asking people to be part of God's mission. And you should do that boldly, because the people who are going to give to you are people who are really passionate about your cause and the people that you are helping. So you can be bold. And writing an appeal letter really is just 4 simple parts. It is connecting emotionally with the donor with a story. Stories are the best way to do that. It is describing a problem that they need to solve, your unique solution to the problem. If you have that match, you're going to provide an offer to them, and then you're asking repeatedly. So step 1, really have a great relatable story. I won't read this to you, but this is a story that a 65-year-old female donor can really understand. They've either done caregiving on their own, or they're thinking about their own living independently as long as they can. So this is a story about a woman with dementia. And it's a really great way to get into that letter. This is another story. We all have a natural tendency to love children and babies, and thinking about a child who was affected by a burn during the holidays is really emotional, and it really makes your donor lean in and want to find out more. You're going to help solve this problem for Xander? Yes, I want to be part of that. Those stories are very different than these kind of examples for a fundraising letter. You have a chance to read these later. So this is an annual report. I'm going to tell you everything that we've done this year. And I'm going to talk a lot about myself and not the people that we serve, and not about you, the donor. So this is, I have capitalized every time they talked about themselves or a project name. That's a really boring way to do a fundraising letter. So don't do one. Don't do an annual report as a letter. Do an annual report as an annual report. So.
And to come back to, your donor doesn't work for your organization. They probably don't remember the name of that project or your pillar, or the internal language that you use to talk about an issue. Use plain language.
Yeah, they want to know about how you're loving people and spreading Christ's love to others. So this is also not a way to start a story. A story isn't a special offer where it's like, Christmas is a joyous time. By the way, do we have a deal for you? I like to pick on brand name Klink, because we've all heard of brand name Klink, and their fundraising letters are all like, do I got a deal for you? That's weird. And that's why people feel funny about asking for money, but you don't need to feel weird. You should feel courageous, because you're asking people to be on mission with you.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So you're going to summarize that larger problem. This one is actually about hunger and a group that rescues food from resorts and weddings and supplies it to the elderly, to the homeless, to single moms. And so there's a way that you can, in 2 or 3 paragraphs, you can summarize that larger problem in a way that's plain English to people. You don't have to use lots of jargon. So people are hungry, and you'd think that food waste would shrink, but it's grown. Can you believe that? And then that ask, this just hurts my heart. Please make your best gift to waste not today. So, which brings us to don't be afraid or apologetic. This is an organization that feels a little squeamish about asking for money, and they're talking about themselves a lot. Well, we fully appreciate the market volatility and rising inflation. Who talks like that? This is a one-on-one letter to someone you know and someone who loves what you do. We are all experiencing. We hope we can count on your financial support. Just ask. You don't have to do any kind of wind up to ask people for money. Will you help? Will you make a difference? So just ask. Will you help neighbors like Ashley with a generous gift today? Can folks like Ashley count on you to help by making your best tax credit eligible gift today? If you're a tax credit organization here in Arizona, or if you are a tax deductible organization, say that. That is not the reason people give, but you should say it at least once in your letter, probably twice in your letter, and just remind people, hey, there's a tax benefit to doing what you do best, helping other people. Just ask. People want to give. I also want to encourage you, since this is a letter to someone you know, and we don't write letters to grandma or our parents anymore as much as we used to, our friends, you want to write at a level people can understand. This is an international, there's an international study that looks at literacy. And there's actually a tool that is built in Word, in the spelling tools. If you go into options, spelling tools and grammar, there's a tool you can click on that's the Fleisch-Kincaid reading ease, and it's going to tell you what percentage of people can actually understand what you're writing. Most of us tend to write at a fairly high level, high school, college, but your letter should be written at that 7th and 8th grade level, because over 80% of people can understand your letter. It's a great way to be accessible and inclusive to as many people as possible who want to give to your mission. So use those tools that are built into Word to see, is my letter actually readable to people?
Mm-hmm. And if you're using Google Docs or the Mac Word program, you can paste your text into some online tools and get that information too. Any questions about story before we dive into data?
Nope, we love data
All
because
right.
data is the
I have one.
magic.
I have one.
Yeah.
They're
You mentioned
thinking.
about Word being used as far as the Kincaid reading ease. Do you know if Grammarly has that?
Not off
I
the
don't know
top
if
of my
Grammarly.
head.
I don't know if Grammarly has that built in. You should definitely check. It probably does. If
Yeah.
not, there are lots of free tools online.
Mhm.
Sure.
So if
Yeah, I
you
can look
if
it
you
up.
type in
Yeah.
readability tools, lots of free tools that you can copy and paste your text in.
I just thought I would ask off the top of your head if you knew. So I have a
I'm not
subscription to
sure.
that.
No,
So
I'm not spending
Yeah.
money on Grammarly because it's in here.
got it.
Oh yeah, I ask Laura all my grammar questions because I'm more of a numbers person. So someone asked earlier, who are you going to send mail to? And the answer is in your donor database. At the very beginning of this process, before you even pull a mailing list, you really should prep some reports and clean those target accounts. Now, prep reports on, okay, who can we mail? Do you have bad address information? Can we add more people in order to get that discount for nonprofit mailing? If you're at 175 people, you can save quite a bunch to add 25 people to your database and get that 200 piece discount for a nonprofit mailing instead of using first class stamps, right? So who are you going to mail is all about who can you mail and then what can you afford to do. Generally, we recommend starting with people with mailing addresses who have given to you or are newly engaged in your organization within the last 0 to 5 years. If you have budgetary issues, bring that down to 0 to 3 years. 0 to 2 years. The more recent your donors, it seems counterintuitive, but the more recent your donors, the more likely they are to give again. Even if that recency was a week ago, because people give from emotional points of view, they get a little bit of a dopamine hit from giving. And if you remind them of that good, warm, fuzzy feeling, oh, it was a week ago, I felt great. Yeah, I can throw in another $10. So even in your, I see a lot of small organizations, they want to exclude people that have given in the last 3 months or 6 months. And I definitely don't recommend that. But look at your donor databases, start adjusting your criteria, and then clean those lists. If you are using first class stamps, you can use online tools to do an NCOA CAS check to make sure that those addresses are actually good. You do not want to spend 73 cents per piece on addresses that are going to get sent back to you, right? You can spend about $25 to $50 on a check of your database to get to make sure that those addresses are actually mailable. And you can Google those NCOA CAS checks beforehand.
Yeah, Brianna, I'll just jump in and say this is a massive part of direct mail.
It is.
You have to figure out who you're going to mail to, what their relationship is to your organization. When some organizations say, I've tried direct mail and it just doesn't work, a lot of times it's because they're not mailing to the right people, or they've bought a list and it's the equivalent of just cold calling people. And so you really need to organize data, figure out who you're going to be sending what to, and just really, again, understand that relationship to your organization and make decisions from there.
Absolutely. I love Blake has Lake, excuse me, has a question about the best donor base, and then the put best in quotation marks. And that's absolutely true, because it really depends on the individual organization. Do you need to be tracking volunteers? Do you need to be tracking, small transactions? Are you very event focused? All of these, there's no one ring to rule them all as far as donor databases are concerned. They all have their pros and cons, and really, the advice I would give to you is start small and work your way up. Don't feel like you have to spend a lot to get the features that you want. You probably won't use all those features if you're spending thousands a month. The cheapest one on this screen is Little Green Light, and it is something that anyone can start with. And then kind of move your way up as you decide what features you need. So to go into why is the data so important? And if donor mail fails, it's probably because of the data. And the data is absolutely critical for personalizing the mail pieces. All of the appeals that you send out the door that say, "Dear friend," or have no personalization, those are the ones that are going to fall flat. You want people to know that you know who they are. So you need to have, their envelope name, including their spouses. You have to have a salutation. If someone goes by, their name is Brian James, but they go by BJ, and you don't have that noted in your database, it's going to fall flat on that salutation. You can include information inside of the letter itself using variable data, and more personalization is going to increase your revenue. You don't have to go super overboard, but start small and then add little pieces of variable text as you go. The absolute most important part is the upgrade asks. So a lot of folks, when they're starting with direct mail, because it's hard, ask for $25, $50, $100, and they ask everyone for the same amount. Well, Laura gave you $500 last week, and I gave you $25 2 years ago. You don't want to ask us both for the same thing. You want to actually calculate those asks based on that person's giving history and their capability, right? Now, other things that you should include is internal coding. So you can actually judge the return on your investment. The other thing that we see is, oh, direct mail didn't work. Like, well, did you even track it? Did you track responses in your donor database? And it's like, oh, well, no. We just tracked year end. Year end is one giant thing, and it was down from last year. Well, according to Giving USA, giving was down 22% overall. If I believe that stat is correct, but Laura will check my math. She memorizes stats like nothing.
It's like I'm a former journalist.
But yeah, personalizing things and not making people fill out the information that you already have on them. So to calculate those personalized ask amounts, it gets a little bit more complicated in this. It's in the toolkits, but essentially you want to ask them for 1 time their last gift, 1.5 times their last gift, and 2 times their last gift. Round it up to the nearest dollar, $5. You can get super complicated, and set a minimum on this. Do not send a piece of mail to someone asking for $5. You're just going to lose money. At this point, the minimum is probably $35 or $50. 10 years ago, 25, but inflation's affecting us all, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But you can do this in Excel after you've exported your mailing list based on the last gift amount.
And again, I just want to say what Brianna's talking about here speaks to knowing our people, right? Understanding who they are, how they're giving, what would be a good fit for them to receive and even be asked for. So the most effective direct mail results you're going to see are when you are mailing to the right people and asking the right people the right questions and asking them for the right dollar amounts that fit them.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a strange dynamic. As fundraisers, sometimes we feel like, oh, I shouldn't over ask someone, right? That would be rude. But in the donor's head, sometimes it's like, oh, you asked me for $500,000. Don't do this in direct mail, but especially in major gifts. You asked me for you think I have 500K? Oh, okay. Like actually can only give you 50, but asking for something much bigger than someone's able to do is a better than the opposite, right? Just asking for, can you give me $2,500? And some people have that as pocket change. Not me, no one in my circle. But other reasons a donor mail fails is bad data. And bad data is absolutely wasted money, because one, it's going to, kill your return on investment right now, but it's also going to upset your donors. This organization, Laura and I both got this letter. It broke our hearts. We probably would have put it directly into the bin if we didn't already know these organizations.
They had our name at one point.
We know for a fact they had our name, and we both got a letter to friend unknown. Unbelievable, right? Have we sent checks in after that? No, it was a permanent damage to our relationship. So avoid wherever possible placeholder text. If you don't know someone's name, just take them off your mailing list. No mail is better than offending someone. You can waste money on sending the same mail to two people in a household, right? If you have a donor database, hopefully they're identifying people that live at the same address, that are using the same phone number, right? Be careful with this though. You want to make sure that you group known couples and families into households. That'll save you money, and also make sure that they know that you know who they are. But if you don't know, don't assume. That's the other thing, right? This donor mail is relational. You want to make sure that the donor feels like you know them. And especially here in Arizona, I see this a lot. Laura mentioned, I think at the beginning of the call, my husband is from Mexico. In most Hispanic cultures have compound last names. Don't mess up those names, because he's not Arturo Lucero. He is Arturo Ruiz Lucero. This is a Vietnamese name. You don't want to mess with people's names. So if you don't know exactly and you have the ability, take them off your mailing list, put them aside for another time, have a volunteer call someone and actually confirm the information from them, or Google it, because property records are available. Facebook, there's so much you can learn about people if you're unsure. Okay, so data, questions about data. Someone popped out, no problem. Let me just look at the chat for a second.
You're good on the chat.
Yep.
Just
okay.
Jeremy was saying goodbye.
Great. So design, we mentioned at the top, there's lots of ways to do donor mail, but this is what we recommend for you. A simple package that is an 8.5 by 14 letter, two-sided, with a reply envelope and of course the outer envelope. But just looking at these appeals, in the chat, can you mention what might be appealing to you? Haha. Bad pun. Photos, short paragraphs. Pics, absolutely.
Can you answer Paula's question about should she buy a list? I just put our blog about that in the chat.
Yes, Paula, buying a list is profitable in 3 years. If you're very careful about what selection criteria you use. It requires nerves of steel and a lot of money. Buying a list, we recommend only for nonprofits that have maximized or fully optimized their existing donor base, that are expanding into other geographic regions, and have enough cash on hand to withstand a loss for 2 to 3 years until that return comes in. It is a long-term investment. So it's very expensive. So we can talk about that later too, if you want to talk more specific about your situation.
Yeah.
So
and
coming back
and
to design.
Brianna, can I just jump in on that for 1 second? I think that it's interesting what you said, right? Because if you're considering that, it should be after you organize all of your data and after you are being intentional with your people, and then you feel like maybe you've gotten maximum results from that. The big mistake I see with people who want to buy lists is they think it's a shortcut to direct mail success, and they do it first, and they wonder why it doesn't work. So it's layers deep on trying to figure out what it means to buy a list, but under no circumstances should you be saying, you know what, I think for our first direct mail project, we're just going to buy a bunch of lists and direct mail everybody. So it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it's and then a question about email lists. Actually, the results for email is actually much lower than direct mail acquisition lists. You get into issues with canned spam, you get into issues with the validity of those email addresses. How many of us have more than one email address? I'm sure everyone would raise their hand. I probably have like 8 that I use on a regular basis. I need to pare those down. But email is absolutely not useful as far as buying lists, especially in the nonprofit world. But we can come back to lists and Paula's specific situation towards the end of the session. Okay, so talking about design, you guys identified, color, there are photos, short paragraphs. So you can't actually read this text, but it's easily scannable, right? These are too small on your screen right now, but if you got this in the mail, you could easily scan it. No one actually reads your mail pieces from beginning to end. I'm sorry to all of the writers. Yes, every word is precious. But you want people to be able to scan the letter, and that's why we use bolding, some underlining, some images to draw people's attention. But none of these look like Nike ads, right? They are not full bleed. They do not, which means the picture goes all the way to the edge. There's lots of white space. They don't have a ton of design elements on them. They're fairly simple, which means you can do it. You can do the design. You don't have to be a professional graphic designer to get these done. So the tips that this is way too much text. Sorry about that. But the one thing I want you to know, though, is that when you're designing for print, you need to be able to print out pieces that are clear and crisp so that when people receive it, it's actually readable. The pictures are vibrant. And that means that you have to design for printers and not digital, right? The things that you can do in Canva today are mostly designed for digital distribution. So you have to really kind of point your, most people are familiar with digital design and less about print design. You should be asking for specifications from your printer or get the specifications for the paper that you're going to be using and your printer, because they all have different needs. And do use professional design software. You can, from TechSoup, I think you can get Adobe Creative Cloud as a nonprofit for free. Like maybe it's like a $25 fee to sign up. But considering that I spend $85 a month on Creative Cloud, it's a bargain. The other thing you should use is vector logos. Vector means that it can scale up and down without getting rasterized, sort of pixelated. And printers use CMYK color. If you want your logo to look like your logo, you need to use the color system that a printer will use. With photos, make sure that they are at least 300 dots per inch so that they don't get pixelated or skewed in there. Now, the other thing, this isn't a toolkit, but when you fold your letter, this is a special USPS thing. When you fold your letter, you actually have to make sure that when it's in the piece, when it's in the envelope, that the address is always in the clear space in the window. So USPS has a test that you can conduct where you literally put your piece in, tap it into all four corners, and you need to make sure that the address is in that window. If it's not in there, it won't get to the right address. Most of USPS is highly automated right now. So you really need to make sure computers can read your piece, and in order for it to get to the carrier level where the humans are reading the pieces. So to save money, you should absolutely avoid full bleed where any images extend to the edge of the piece. That means you have to print on a larger piece of paper and then trim things down. It costs more money, it takes more time to do. We recommend that you use color on the front of your piece and black and white grayscale on the back. That means it's a little bit cheaper to print on the back than the front, and you need more money for your mission, so save those pennies. Same thing with variable data. Use it only on the front. It'll save you money, and your donors won't really notice that their name isn't on the back, right? You said, dear Brianna, hey Brianna, we know that you sent this letter to me. The other thing that is technical is to avoid match mailings. So you probably have a piece. Oh, I should have had this one. You'll
Like
see
this
these.
one. Here's a match
Thank
mailing.
you. Yeah, anything without a window and is personalized is considered a match mailing by the printer. And what you'll end up seeing is that they'll have either a QR code or a really tiny code. Sometimes it's a UV print so that they can match that the letter and the envelope go to the same person, right? This can increase it complicates printing, can increase the chance for error, but it really increases your prices when you are outsourcing. When you're insourcing, this means that you and your volunteers have to make sure that everything lines up and matches. And that takes a lot more attention than you necessarily might have. I think most of us who have been in stuffing parties have gotten to the end and realized, oh no, I have Laura Ingalls' envelope and Laura Irving's letter. Ooh boy, right? So avoid those match mailings. And to save you absolute all the money, don't change your design at the printer. That is going to cost you time and energy and money. They will charge you reset fees. Try to avoid it whenever possible. Yes, no stop the presses moment. I harp on this a lot because it's so important. When you're designing, try to avoid using blank reply devices, right? I have the world's largest handwriting. I cannot fill these out. And I'm a 45-year-old woman without arthritis. So if your donors have to fill all of this out, they're just not going to return the piece. Make your replies as large as possible. Give them lots of space to move, to fill things in. Give them the most white space as that you can, and pre-populate as much as you need to. If you need an email for an electronic receipt, include their email. You probably already have it, and you can use variable data to pre-populate that. And my favorite and least favorite thing is to avoid the non-machinable surcharge. So USPS, as I mentioned, highly automated. And when they can't send a piece through their automation machines because they are too thick, or they are a weird shape, squares get the non-machinable package if they're too heavy. So if you start stuffing a lot of brochures, or you get you get a great deal on super thick paper, you need to pay attention to make sure that the piece can actually bend and is not over 3.5 ounces. Otherwise, you pay an additional 46 cents per piece. Yes, the dreaded butterfly stamp. You can usually, Paula asks, it takes a lot to overstuff a number 10 envelope, but it's still possible. And most of it's because someone got a too heavy cardstock on a brochure or a reply card. You just need to pay attention. A single magnet will probably not be an issue. Just pay attention to the overall composition of all of the pieces, right? It may get a postal scale, your food scale will also work, right? And there are some USPS tests that you can find on their website to make sure that you don't hit the non-machinable surcharge. Okay. I want to make sure I got all of the questions because there were a few flying in the door. Okay. There was a question from Pam about, would it be better to have the bottom reply slip already detached? There are two reasons why we don't recommend that. One, easy to get lost. So when your donor opens the letter, there's a lot of inserts. That reply slip can end up underneath my couch fairly easily. So now there's no reply. The other reason is that it requires matching again. If you're going to pre-fill that reply slip with as much donor information as possible, then now you have to match the letter to the reply slip. And that just adds one more opportunity for error, complicates your production process a little bit.
I'm using my 90 words per minute to answer your questions.
Type. Was there anything else that yeah. Okay, so production. If you are outsourcing the production of your mailing, then really you're just packaging up your design files so that that printer can utilize them. Talk to your printers ahead of time and ask in particular where they prefer the address. Because shockingly enough, if you put the address at the top of the letter versus you put the address at the bottom of the letter, some printers actually have folding machines that only really work if it's at the top. Some are more agnostic about where the address is, but you want to ask ahead of time so that they don't charge you. You know, it's like 3 cents, 5 cents more, but it does add up when you're talking about 2,000 pieces. So just ask them for templates that you can use for their particular processes and equipment. And then if you use them over and over again, you'll get to know like what they like, what they prefer. You know, when you're working on envelopes, some of my printers don't like things that go over the top. Some of them have no problem with that. There's a lot of different variation on equipment and capabilities. So just talk to your printers. They're happy to talk shop. So we're going to talk really about direct production in your office. So if you're doing the printing and mailing internally, those of you that are using first-class stamps, we recommend sorting the mailing list. If you're using nonprofit postage, you can ignore this for a moment. Sorting by zip, we're not going to get into the actual setting up a bulk mailing. If you've done it before, I'll just say if you've done it before and you know how to do it, great, continue on. Otherwise, I wouldn't try to teach yourself how to prep a bulk mailing for USPS. It is complicated and requires a lot of skill. So if you're using forever stamps, sort your list by last name, first name, something so that you can easily keep things moving, right? And then print one of every piece, put it in front of somebody else. I don't know how many times 7 people have looked at the same letter over and over and over again. You put it into somebody's nephew's hands and they's like, oh, you misspelled the, it's T-E-H, not T. Put it into someone's hands that has never seen the piece because they will find it. And then you want to repeat that tap test too, making sure, you know, it's measure twice, cut once, all through this. So once you actually have your finals, we recommend printing your pieces in phases. First, you want to print the first page with all of your merged data. Then you can flip those pieces and print on your black and white printer on the other side, or print a whole separate piece. That's not a problem. It's not personalized on the second page. So if you have problems with duplex printing, you don't have to redesign your whole thing. That's another reason to avoid variable printing on the back page. So print all of those one piece at a time. First page, second page, outer envelope, inner envelope. Keep the original sort whenever possible and fold every piece. Use the measurements from your tap test. Avoid paper clips by using a ruler or credit card to crease, and fold in batches. Right? You can usually fold 4 or 5 pieces at a time, get that cool crease, and then separate them. Stuff them all. Stuff all of the pieces, then seal the pieces, then apply your stamp if using. Doing this one step at a time instead of assembly style will help you avoid spending too much on those first class stamps, right? Because if something gets out of sort, you still have the opportunity to have those open envelopes. You haven't wasted 73 cents on a first class stamp. No, believe me, follow the what slowly and perfectly, as my oboe teacher would tell me. Laura?
Oh, you actually had a team waste $70 on stamps, and that just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
That breaks your budget heart. So, hey, we do have a question about paperweight. Quick question. What paperweight would you use for a trifold brochure?
For a trifold brochure, probably a 60 or 80 pound cover stock.
All right, there you go.
High gloss.
And what do we use for appeal letters? Because there's paper thin, paper for appeal letters, and then there's something just a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get into paperweights.
We can talk paperweights at the end. We'll wax poetic about paperweights after this.
I'll talk about paperweights at the end because it's complicated. So once everything's stamped, you have your whole list. You can just send it to, you can wait for your carrier to show up, or you can just drop it off at any mailbox. If you're smart enough and skilled enough to do the nonprofit rate, you do want to verify that you are still in zip sort and complete your paperwork and go to the business mail entry unit, which sounds super fun, doesn't it? Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, so we ran through this super lightning fast, but the good news is you have a whole bunch of tools in that bit.ly link. The Venture 19 group is going to remail that to you. We also can help, right? If this is overwhelming, we can be your Sherpas. We handle all of your direct mail means, planning through mailing, so that you're really just in an approver role. Laura should take over because my mouth has stopped.
You can look, we try to be the butterball turkey line for direct mail. Yes, we can do your mailing. We're much more affordable, much more custom than a lot of the big name groups that you've probably heard of, but we'll help you find the right fit. You may be in a position to use one of those firms. If you're not a great fit for us, we'll make recommendations to you. We'll also tell you how not to pull your hair out or have your hair go gray, in the thick of fundraising season. So we started doing year-end appeals in July. So we're actually ahead of the game with our clients. So there's room on our dance card if you want to get rid of that, save your own energy and focus on something else. But we've also have lots of step-by-step guides to do it. And if you email us, we're a small business, so we're going to answer your call and try to give you the best advice possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no crying and mailing. That's what we think about.
And baseball, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So with that, we'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Yeah, awesome. So much incredible information. Yeah, thank you so much for this. I'm guessing a lot of minds are spinning and churning a little bit. Maybe there are some follow-up questions. So just to reiterate what Laura and Brianna said, absolutely reach out to them. They'll answer your questions. And some of you may be thinking, you know what, I want to learn more about using these guys to help with our year-end mailing project. And so they would definitely love to hear from you on that. So, and of course, if you just have other things you want to talk through with Heather or with myself about managing your data and organizing things and just different things like that, we're happy to have those conversations as well. So yeah, really, really great stuff. Laura and Brianna, thank you so much. Here's what I want to do. I want to pray for us. And for those of you that need to go, you are obviously welcome to do that. And if you would like to stay on the line for another 5 or 6 minutes because you have some additional questions, you can do that as well. I have a question that I'd like to ask after I pray. So we'll get everything rolling with that. But let me take a minute and pray for us. Lord, thank you so much again for just these few minutes. I thank you for all this great information. Lord, I pray that we won't feel overwhelmed by it at all, but that you would just continue to give us things to think about. And again, as I prayed in the beginning, I just ask that you'd make clear maybe just a few next steps that we need to begin to explore, or maybe even take in the direction of experimenting or using direct mail. Thank you for Laura and Brianna and their expertise. Just pray that you would bless their work in a special way, and just bless the work of everybody who's on this call today. And we thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Wonderful.
Feel free to stay on for a few more minutes. You can unmute yourselves and fire away on some questions. Brianna, I have a quick question. When you are talking about year-end direct mail, are
Mhm.
you talking about sending out one letter that lands, Labor Day-ish kind of time frame, or are you talking about campaign type feel where we're going to follow up one letter with another? There's going to be a couple different touch points. I know there are different approaches, but what do you see and what works best out there, right, as far as continuing to keep things in front of people at the end of the year?
It really depends on your financial goals, your current budget, right, and what you expect your return on investment is, right? None of there's pretty simple math involved, and the bit.ly link has a toolkit on planning for your financial success. So some of our clients mail once a year, and they mail sometime in the fall. If that was a veterans organization, they're going to mail before Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
And really focus on Veterans Day. A organization that's working in anti-hunger will probably hit September, which is the official name is Hunger Action Month, right? So it really it depends. If you're a particularly religious, very focused on religious imagery, Christmas, Advent, all that sort of stuff. So data, go back to your data. When did people respond? What did they respond to? How fast did they do it? Something earlier in the year is, or earlier in the season, people touch these a lot, right? That's the other thing about direct mail is it sits around, and you'll probably notice, 6 months from now, someone sent in the reply card from your December mailing. So if you can afford to do a full campaign with a couple touch points, a reminder letter to people that didn't respond, followed by a postcard to the people that didn't respond to the reminder, then absolutely do it. But if you can't, then just do what you can, right?
Yeah.
And build from there. Just start and build from there.
And if you
So-
give yourself runway, then you're able to track your campaign, and you'll know what you need to do. If you can get something out in early October this year or early November, you can send a letter, and then you can just rework that letter a bit, change the art on the outside, and send the exact same letter with a few tweaks, and no one will know the difference. So we see that.
Yeah.
We see people send a letter and then a mini appeal in a different shaped envelope.
So for
We talk options.
the person who's on this call who has never done anything with direct mail,
Yeah.
What would you recommend the timeline that they work with? When should their letter hit mailboxes this fall in a perfect world if they were going to try direct mail for the first time?
After the election.
Okay.
So
Most people are dropping their pieces about the 5th
Of November.
5th or 6th of November. Yeah.
Okay.
That gives you enough runway.
And even though, as you said in the beginning, December and even the end of December is a big time for people to give gifts. It's okay for the letter to drop earlier because obviously they're just going to respond to it. A lot of people just respond in December or toward the end of the year, but it's okay for that letter to hit earlier.
Yeah, and that's where you use your email, your to remind people of the story, right? If you can have a drip campaign via email that's about the same story, it reminds people they received it, right? It's
if I was a small nonprofit, I would ask in early November. I would get my board members or myself on the phone to call donors and do a thankathon, because it doesn't cost anything to do a thankathon. Maybe you send a Thanksgiving card, but again, it's cheaper just to pick up the phone and tell people how much you appreciated them this year. So ask, thank. I might send an email that reports on the impact of donors, a short email. And then I would have another ask in early December. Maybe you do Giving Tuesday. Those are different kinds of donors than a mail donor, but you're asking again, and then you're spending the rest of the Christmas season thanking people for blessing others. And then that end of the year, 12% of all giving happens in the last week of the year.
That's right.
Have 3 or 4 emails that go out that ask people to give, remind them about their tax deduction, how they're blessing others, and tell them to pay it forward into the new year.
That's a great example of, what we've been talking about with multi-channel campaigns. With one message, one ask, that you're hitting multi-channels, including social media. Anytime you can, just elevate that message and communicate it to donors, then you're reminding them. But that piece of mail in their hand, I just want to thank you guys for what you shared, because that does something that the other things don't do, for people to hold on to it, have it, and statistics say it's going up as a response.
We encourage people to lock down 3 channels for year end. Have a mailer, at least one mailer that goes out that has an envelope for people to write that check. Send at least a couple emails that tell the story that was in that letter, so they're seeing different touch points. And then make sure your donate page works.
Yes.
We have a blog that I'll put up about.
You don't, boy, that is a soapbox issue for us. So we try to hit that a lot. You got to make sure it's easy to give. Yeah.
Make sure it's super easy to give online for, not for the 65-year-old average donor, but for the Brianna donor who gives at the last minute on December 31st.
On my phone as my parents are watching the Doctor Who Christmas special.
Good. Fire away. Sorry guys. Finish up.
There's a question about paperweight. I will deal with this. If you're outsourcing your printing, you're likely going to have the option of 60 or 70 pound copy text paper. If you want to spend a little bit more and have a nicer feel, you can get 80 pound, but don't go heavier than 80 pound. There are differences between weights on text paper and cover stock. I won't get into the technical details, but 80 pound cover stock is very different than 80 pound text. Talk to your printers. Get samples from them. They might give you a book like this, so you can, feel the differences between different weights. If you are doing your own printing internally, you are going to likely get somewhere between 60 and 70 pound. That's what average copy paper is. It's good enough. You don't have to be super fancy with your paper. Where people get in trouble is with adding a whole bunch of brochures that are super thick, or a newsletter that was extra heavy paper. Just be mindful of what you stick in so that you don't have to pay more at the post office. Hopefully that answered that question. But I'd love to nerd out about paper. Haha.
And postage.
Do you guys have a website, or is it possible to do a consultation with you guys?
Absolutely. You can email us there, abejasolutions.com.
Mhm.
We answer all of our emails. And then
I'm
here's
just
the
wondering
best- oh, yeah.
exactly. You guys,
Paula, that's my phone number. Text me. Call
Yeah.
me.
let me see.
That's my cell phone.
That's her actual
Let me
phone
see.
number. Direct
I don't. Oh, let me see it.
in the
Okay.
chat. Or we can
Okay.
I'm not gonna
I
I'm
am
not
in
gonna say
Phoenix,
it
but
out loud. Yeah.
my phone number is DC, but don't be afraid.
Okay.
It's not Washington
Okay.
calling.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
And we're we joke with everyone we're really terrible at sales because we're in this to support missions that
Yeah, I can sense that. It's really great.
Uh,
It's very refreshing.
so-
Thank you.
so if it doesn't make financial sense, we're not gonna take your money, and we're gonna point you
Yeah.
in the right direction
Yeah.
because
That's
you
my
know,
PK problem.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, Laura's a PK.
Okay.
But we also don't want you crying over mail, and it can
Yeah.
get frustrating because it's complicated. So, butterball turkey.
No question is too simple. We do have a lot of
Okay.
step-by-step guides that lead you through it, but we think we've heard every question. So if you have a new and novel question, definitely send it our way. hello@abejasolutions.com. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Other questions for people that stayed on? Fire away.
I hate to beat this horse, but I'm so curious about the I don't like beating horses anyway, but the idea I said it. And
Yeah, I
regretted
know.
it.
I know. Yeah.
I'm just not sure I have a lot of 65-year-old donors. I live in Silicon Valley. I have a lot of younger donors. And so, but my question is, I would like to increase because my 65-year-old donor probably has more money or wants to do something like this. So that's my first question. Because you're talking about personalized data, my concern is even putting a QR code, because I put a QR code, I create a web page, a landing page that has video stories. So it has a higher compelling factor to me, but I am concerned then I don't have variable data because then they just get routed to my regular donor site that doesn't have the increase ask. It just has the 25, 50, 100. And that feels like the problem to me. But I would say 80% of my donor, I've never received a check at that, like from someone.
Okay, cool.
But you do need that multi-channel approach because you're going to get higher gift amounts that way with mail.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So a couple things you can do. I'm so excited. Yes, you have non-average donors. This is a fun problem. This is a great problem to have. So first of all, USPS data shows that millennials and zennials love mail.
They do.
Because it is novel to them. They likely won't send
Besides
the check.
bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is novel. So send the mail, but don't expect the check to come in the return envelope. I'd still include it until your data tells you that no one uses it, right? Because the extra cost of including that envelope, and say you're sending 1,000 pieces, right? We're talking about 10 cents a piece. That's $100. Someone sends one check for $100, you're paid for, right? But for those donors who get the mail, they love the mail, and then they're going to answer online, yes, you're missing out on that personalized ask amount, but you're priming them for a particular gift. And what you can do is when you're building that landing page, actually look at the distribution of gift amounts. And okay, of this segment, you can get super fancy, of this segment of donors, and I'm going to assume because you're in Silicon Valley, you can get really nitty gritty on this. This segment of donors always answers online, and 1/3 of them have donation asks in this sequence. That's what my donation page is going to look like, because that's the vast majority of them, right? I'm going to match the landing page to my donor data instead of just that 25, 35, whatever. The other thing too is you could have different landing pages that have different ask amounts for those particular segments.
Brilliant.
So fun with data. Yeah, so you can say, oh, this third of people get to go to this landing page, this third of people go to this other landing page. So you
Oh
can
my
be
gosh, that's so smart.
Yeah. Yeah, and the manual way is
brilliant.
segmenting. The manual way is segmenting the lists and asking for different gift amounts by tier. There are databases, there are websites that actually can serve up individual gift amounts, but we don't know anyone but the big guys that are using that. But you can do it yourself. By three.
I mean, I'm just using Donor Box, so I don't have that. So
yeah, but you just make 3 copies of that campaign page and just have different QR codes for those, and no one will know the difference.
Different appeal codes.
Yeah,
slightly different asks. Yeah.
We approached this session as like, you know, let's just get one basic appeal out the door, but really like the 201 session is segmentation and really getting to know your donors and what is paying, how they respond, you know, what do they respond to, and segmenting. You know, we didn't talk really about monthly donors. There's a different equation for them. You don't want to ask for one time. You ask for 3 times their last gift and a whole bunch of other things. But you can do pretty much anything in Excel, you know, and
by me, you mean you, because I can't do anything in Excel, but
you,
we'll talk.
You know, the royal you, yeah. But yeah, I am that you know, Laura kid. I say I'm Gen X, but you know, some people say I'm millennial. I'm right on that cusp. But I love getting pieces in the mail because all I get is garbage, bills or political mail, but I am not going to send you a check.
Yeah.
I don't know where my checkbook is. I think I still have one.
I don't know anyone who has one. Yeah. So
right. Yeah,
that's great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, others, just a couple more minutes here. Fire away. Anybody?
Any questions? If not, I'm gonna ask Brianna about turning email addresses without mail addresses into mail addresses.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Cheap, and it could get you over that $250, so you can get the cheaper postage.
So,
tell us about the reverse email append, Brianna.
Okay, this is another 201, you know, session. If you have a lot of email addresses of people that you don't necessarily have a good mailing address for, maybe you have their office address or something, you can do something called a reverse email append. So the world, Facebook, Google knows everything about us. And USPS actually owns your address. So data brokers can take that email address and match it to a very likely first name, last name, and mailing address. Oftentimes we can get the phone number too, but not as often. On average, those matches do about 40% of your list. So if you have a list of 1,000 email addresses that are without mailing addresses, you'll likely get 400 mailing addresses back, and that easily gets you to the next next level of direct mail more people and gets more multi-channel opportunities to get in front of folks. It's not perfect, but it is super cheap. 15 cents per match with $150 minimum. So it works out really well for small organizations.
And what if small organizations all got together to do it?
Where do you get that?
If a whole bunch of Venture 19 groups got together, gave us their data in different tabs, would we do a reverse email append for $300 and whatever and send it back?
Oh yeah, for sure. Again, we're bad at sales and I'm genetically predispositioned to save money. So the minimum is not Abeja's minimum. It is usually the data broker's minimum. We're happy to split that with multiple organizations. So if 3 of you came in, we'd be like, okay, well, you're $50. You have a
And we just do it as a
minimum
pass-through
discount.
cost
We
because
pass
we want
through
you
the
to be-
cost. So we can do that for you. It takes about 48 hours. Mostly it's just me checking that all the columns are in the right place. And we send back the list. We can do that, or you can literally Google reverse email append. Yeah, and get it
I
done
did not know
yourself.
that existed. That's awesome.
I didn't either. Yeah.
Get to that $250 to get those postage discounts.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great.
and you know, to come back to like sort of that acquisition is don't buy lists, buy information about the people that you already know, tap that well over and over and over again until you've optimized all of your responses there, and then go out and look for people that are like your donors. But the more information you know about your donors,
That's right.
the better your acquisition target list can get.
Look at volunteers, event attendees. I'm trying to think some other folks that would be lying around. I put a blog up that has kind of our list of other folks.
People who are on your newsletter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people who are on your newsletter
absolutely.
list, you don't have a mailing address for them. Think about people who are warm prospects for you before you ever go out and buy a list from a nonprofit list broker, not a zip code list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so great. Okay, awesome.
Oh, great.
Well, we do want to let you guys go. Thank you so much for your time and expertise, and yeah, just so much out there. Yeah, it's fun to sort of geek out over this and get in the trenches on it a little bit. So thank you. Again, we'll send out all the follow-up information, but man, just really encourage you to reach out to Laura and Brianna just with more questions and if they can help you with some next steps. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
happy to help.
oh, so great. Thank
Great.
you guys so much. Thanks
Thanks for
everybody for
having
joining
us.
us.
Yeah.
And we'll send follow-up info out and we'll catch everybody soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. God bless,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.